Ben Aris, who is the editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews. Ben, always good to have you on the program. How important is Avdiivka, considering it's pretty much a ghost town now? There's nothing there.
It's symbolic, isn't it? In so much as Putin's got elections in the middle of March, and he's very keen to have a military victory to go into those elections, in so much as we've been reporting, everyone's reporting, that the battle is at a stalemate and neither side is making much progress, particularly after the Ukrainian much vaunted counteroffensive failed to get anywhere this summer. And Ukraine is now on the back foot, and so if the Russian side scores a victory and takes Avdiivka, then that will be very useful to Putin politically. Militarily, it doesn't make that much difference. And as you say, there's not much left of it. It's like Bakhmut a year ago, a very similar story, another town that the Russians were pounding and eventually took. And so this is more politics, I think, rather than militarily significant.
Ben, you mentioned the stalemate. This is a very delicate moment, considering the Americans have been telling the Ukrainians that they don't believe Ukraine should launch any attacks in the year 2024 and should look ahead to 2025. But clearly that won't have gone down well with Kiev, and especially President Zelensky, who's replaced the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, because he wants some advances made.
Yes, I mean, Kiev, Bankova, Zelensky, they want victory. They're continuously calling for more and better and more powerful weapons, and they're simply not getting them. In fact, quite the opposite's happened. They've been cut off from their funding, and the reports from the battlefield is that they're already rationing shells. They're firing 1 to every 5 to 10 that the Russians are firing. And more recently, there are reports that they're running out of missiles and rockets that are essential for the air defense. And so militarily, the situation is looking bleaker and bleaker. They desperately want this US money to come and to resume the supplies. At the same time, the EU was promising 1 million shells by March, and Borrell came out and said, well, actually, we're going to send about half of that. And the 2025 year is important because finally Europe, the West, has started ramping up investment into its arms production and adding new lines. And so everyone's expecting that things might change as far as supplies, that the EU will be producing a lot more artillery shells, and then that will even things on the battlefield. And then Ukraine is back in the game with possibly a chance to win this war. But this year, I think there's no progress. And the new head of the military that Zelensky just appointed, Zarsky, he's already said that we've given up on offense, that was the counteroffensive, and we're now in defense. And Avdiivka is going to be key in that, in so much as Bakhmut, the casualty rate on both sides, but amongst the Ukrainians, was horrific. And he doesn't want to lose a lot of troops. And so there's a good chance that, given the city's already nearly surrounded, that they will withdraw and concede a defeat there and fall back. In order simply to preserve soldiers' lives. And Zarsky, he has this reputation of sacrificing too many troops. He was in charge of Bakhmut, and he doesn't want to make the same mistake again, because morale is already low in the Ukrainian forces, and he's in a politically delicate situation with this reputation he has.
Ben, I haven't got the okay from my editor who's in the gallery, but there's a breaking line coming, and it's clearly unconfirmed. You won't have seen that because you're looking at your computer while we're talking. But the IFAX news agency in Russia is saying that Alexei Navalny is dead. The prison service in Russia is saying that he is dead. I mean, if that's confirmed, what's that going to do to Russian politics? Let me put this in context. You yourself are the second longest serving foreign correspondent to have worked in Moscow. This would be amazing if it's true.
It would be huge. Navalny's health has been deteriorating since he was thrown into jail on his return in January 2021. And he's been a centerpiece, a focal point for the criticism of Putin. And in fact, when they arrested Navalny, that marked the beginning of the sort of gloves off, brutal repression of all opposition, all media. The Kremlin had been careful to sort of play both sides and do it by the rule book. And after Navalny's arrest, the gloves came off and they just shut everything down and shut down the opposition. Again, there were 2 protests after his arrest. where the Russians came out. Navalny himself, is not particularly popular amongst the Russians themselves. However, the protests were protesting against the way he was treated. The people were saying, we don't want a government that just arbitrarily throws people in jail. I think there will be protests again if Navalny's death is confirmed. But again, that they won't spark a revolution. He doesn't have the backing of the general Russian people to the extent where they would be so outraged by his death that they would come to the streets and actually fight with the Kremlin. But we will see, unrest. We'll see a huge outcry by the international community. Putin's already abysmal image will be just sullied further. And Navalny, as I say, he's been in a strict regime penal camp for a while, and his health was deteriorating, visibly lost a lot of weight in recent months. We see him very little. And there's been speculation from the beginning that he wasn't going to make it. And if this is confirmed, then it just confirms all our worst fears about his treatment, his situation, and the way that Putin treats opposition figures.
Okay, Ben, just to stress to our viewers that this is unconfirmed, but it is reported on the Reuters news agency and the IFAX news agency that Russia's prison service says that Alexei Navalny is dead. Ben, thank you very much indeed.